Hannah Murray on TRE in the afternoon.
Joining us on the line now is Yehudis Fletcher, a writer, activist and changemaker whose book Chutzpah is a memoir of faith, sexuality and daring to stay. As the daughter of a rabbi raised in an Orthodox Jewish community, she struggled to conform to the strict expectations placed upon her and her siblings. When her sexuality came to blows with the expectations of her family and her community, she was confronted with either losing the faith she loved or losing herself. So she made the most daring decision of all. She decided to stay. Welcome to the show, Yehudis.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. So what does it mean to be brought up in an Orthodox Jewish family and community?
It's probably the most restrictive, or alongside the most restrictive ways in which people live a religious life in the UK, and there's communities across the world, but it's about really strict gender-based segregation, restricted access to education, universal early marriage, and of course there's no gays here, and for me, I realized, actually, first of all, there was this world that was presented to me as so binary is actually a little bit more complex and textured.
So how was it growing up? Did you go to a school where everybody was Orthodox Jewish?
Well, I didn't really go to school at all. The local Jewish school was not considered to be conservative enough for my parents. And so I met with a small group of other children in the top of a synagogue. Some of our classes took place in the cloakroom of the synagogue. Some of them took place in the boiler cupboard. So really sort of unacceptable and unsafe conditions for children. And we studied a lot of religious texts, but then we had my mum was an English teacher and she was trained, so she taught us English, and there was a little bit of what we call secular studies, so any studies that are not religious. But broadly, it was about really being segregated from the rest of society. I think that was the biggest difference.
Yeah. And because that was your normal, that was how you were brought up. Did you feel like you were missing out? Did you feel like you were being segregated, that other children your age were experiencing so much more or different things than you were, or did you just not know any different?
Well, I mean, we lived in Glasgow, so we saw other people, and I saw that other children did things that I wasn't allowed to do. I think I was conscious of the things that we weren't allowed to do. But at the same time, I also felt this kind of sense of, maybe you could call it superiority. I felt like we were exceptional. We did things in a very special way that was different from other people. And I think that's probably how my parents wanted me to see it.
Yeah. And did you have friends that you socialized with that were being brought up the same way?
Yeah, we had a small group of people, the other kids that went to the school, and then we would also travel to bigger communities. There's one in Gateshead, so we'd often go. We only eat kosher food, so some of that had to be imported from outside of Glasgow, and some of it wasn't available at all. So we'd make these trips to Gateshead or Manchester, either to visit family or to buy food, and we'd meet other children there. We also went on summer camps, so we'd meet other children. So we felt like we were part of almost this bigger club that we were sort of exclusive members of.
Yeah. And often when children are brought up in very religious environments and restrictive environments, when they get older and start to learn how other people live, often they make the choice to leave and to live what's deemed to be a normal life. Did you ever feel like doing that? Did you ever consider or have friends that weren't Orthodox Jewish that made you think, maybe there is something different out there for me?
So one of the things that's unique about Haredi society, which is our word for very Orthodox Jewish, is that this universal early marriage is baked in. So getting married while you're still very young, and it's not child marriage, you're normally sort of 17 or 18. But then restricted access to contraception means you get married to somebody who's essentially a stranger, and then you get pregnant straight away. And that is by design, to make sure that if you do make those choices later on, you do it with as a mother of children, which makes things much, much more complicated. So that's part of it. But yeah, I certainly did consider, leaving. And the expectation is that certainly if you're like me and you're a bit bolshy, and definitely if you're a lesbian, what you're supposed to do is leave, right? You're not supposed to change the topography of your community. You're meant to say, this doesn't work for me, and slam the door on your way out. What I've done is radically different to that. I said, hang on. This is where I live. This is where my children are. There's a lot about this culture that I really love and enjoy. The way that we live, so connected to each other, the wonderful food and the songs that we have, and the way that we, the way we practice our spirituality means so much to me. And I didn't want to have to leave that just so that I could be out as a lesbian, or so that I could have, just so that I could be with people who understand that women should be allowed to drive if they want to, right? I wanted my community, but I also want it to be a safe place for everyone. And I think people ought to be able to say if they want to. So I've done that now. And I think that I've made it easier for other people if they want to stay.
Yeah, that's amazing, because if you look at the gay community and the Orthodox Jewish community, you would assume that the two can't mix.
Well, yeah, but I've also, I've got 19 people coming for Friday night this week, and they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and they're all from within the community, and that, we're here. We're queer.
That's amazing.
That's just the way it is. And yeah, I think there's something quite radical in just that act of staying.
Yeah. And how did your parents take you being gay?
Not particularly well. And that's their story to tell. And I feel quite strongly that, I really acknowledge that my situation is embarrassing for them. I've created a very difficult situation that they didn't plan for, and no doubt is quite painful for them. But I wouldn't treat my children the way they've treated me.
Yeah. So you've learned a lot from this experience, I guess. So do you have children now?
Yeah, I've got 3 children.
Oh, how lovely. So how are you bringing them up?
Within the community, but that doesn't mean that they don't have autonomy, and that's the difference. They're here, they live this life, and they also know that if parts of it don't work for them, that's it's up to them to make those choices. And certainly I've tried to eradicate the parts of this lifestyle that I find quite harmful. So for example, there is within the community a systemic denial of secular education. But my eldest is going on to do he's doing his A-levels now, and then hopefully he'll go on to study maths, because there's no dissonance between being able to practice your religion and having access to society. And I think I've been able to show my children that. And when I model that, I think it also shows to other people that that's possible.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's amazing. I think it's brilliant what you're doing, because there's always an argument when people live a certain way, and that's the way it's been for many, many years. People use words like tradition and this is how it is. This is how it's always been, as if that's a justification for things. And, there will be people that question behaviors or the way things are done over the years. The idea of people needing to marry so young at the age of 17 or 18, a lot of other members of society will think, my goodness, that is too young to get married, and to have children. So it takes people like you to make a stand and say, well, no, I still want to be involved in this community and I still believe in my faith and religion, but it needs to be okay for me to make different choices and live a different way.
Yeah. So what I say is no one should have to choose between staying in the community and staying safe. And that's my vision for my community, that it becomes a safe place that people can choose to stay in. And, I think we're doing that. I founded Project Nachamu, which means in Hebrew, that means to be comforted. And that's a think tank that is dedicated to finding solutions, sort of mapping and researching the issues, but also proposing solutions going forward so that no one does have to make that choice between staying or staying safe.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And does it mean that you're less orthodox? I mean, can you just be Jewish, or, would your parents or other people say, well, if you're living like that, then you're not Orthodox Jewish? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there certainly would people who make that argument that to take that name or to hold on to that label, you have to practice a certain way. But the thing is, there's a bit of a difficulty in that, because if you take that to the nth degree, then you're saying part of those rules, so part of the requirement for conformity is not speaking out. So as soon as you speak out, then by virtue of speaking out, you're no longer part of the in group. Then you're automatically part of the out group. That means that's a really problematic type of community. And I don't believe that to be true about us as a society. And I don't believe that to be true about us as a community. I don't think that being a lesbian or being an activist for children's rights or women's rights or any of those things that I do means that I'm not Orthodox Jewish. On the contrary, right? I practice my religion carefully, and I do sort of carve out the bits that I see to be harmful, and put them down carefully, right? I'm not burning down the house. I would rather say I put them down carefully. But I treasure my heritage and I treasure my faith. And I think for my community to be sustainable and for it to survive, it needs to be safe. And that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why different traditions or religions can move with the times. I think that's a really important thing for all of us to think about. That there are lots of religious practices, not just in Orthodox Judaism, but going into so many religions that a lot of people in society were deem to not be okay or not acceptable in these current times. So I think it's really important for these issues to be discussed and for people like you to stand up and say, no, this is my faith, this is my religion, but I don't believe in certain practices, and doing something different and letting other people know that it's okay to do the same. I think it's hugely important.
Yeah. And, a central tenet of the Jewish faith is, in Hebrew, you say, v'chai b'hem, you should live by them. And the commentary on that is not only, what does that mean? You should live by them. The unspoken bit is you should not die by them. Right? These rules are made to live by, not to die by. They're not made to crush us. They're made to add beauty to our lives. They're made for us to be able to live sustainably and equitably in society. We want this, faith, but we don't want it to crush us. And that, that's not me, Yehudis, saying that. That is a central core part of Jewish belief. And I think that you talk about, it's not really about updating religion. It's about looking for the sources that we have within our faith that strengthen this position of promoting human rights, promoting individual rights, because ultimately what we're trying to do is live our best lives, right? We're trying to be good people. And I think sometimes people need reframing on what does it mean to be good? And we might need adjustment of our expectations of what we thought our community could or would look like. But broadly, I'm not saying anything that's radical. This is not a reformation of Judaism. It's holding on to the values that we have within Jewish society and just thinking a bit more broadly about how can we do this in a warmer, more holistic way.
Yeah. And in general, what kind of response have you had from other members of your community?
Oh, some people like me and some people don't.
Yeah. I mean, does that affect you? I mean, the people who don't like you or don't like what you're doing, is that difficult to deal with?
Sure, I'm a human being. I want everyone to like me. But I'm saying things that make people very, very uncomfortable. I'm asking people to sit down and think about things that they'd rather not think about. And I'm asking people for change. And not everyone is ready for change. So I think, whilst it's hard, it'd be really silly of me to think that I'd just come up with these radical ideas and everybody would welcome them with open arms. So I'm in it for the long haul, Hannah. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier about women being able to drive. So is that something that isn't supposed to happen with Orthodox Jews?
Yeah, within parts of the community, women are not allowed to drive. And that is really quite strictly enforced through the children's schools. So many of the schools, so there's a kind of communal expectation that really your social belonging really depends on that you send your children to specific faith schools, and those faith schools won't give your child a place, or they could withdraw a place from your child if the mother drives, and that's how it's enforced. So some people, even if they might drive, say, outside the community, they'd park their car out of the area and then take the bus back home. Or people end up using private taxis, which brings with it its own wealth of problems. But it really restricts women's ability to have personal autonomy.
Oh, definitely. And there must be other women in the communities that think, hold on a minute, this isn't okay. I want to be able to drive. I mean, you must have had the conversation with other women who are appreciative of what you're doing, who are thinking, gosh, why didn't I speak out many years ago? I wish I could have been driving for the last 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, so Hannah, actually, this hit the press back in 2015. There was a school that was silly enough to put the rule in writing that said, if any mothers who are driving, their children are going to be thrown out of school. But the reason they put it in writing was because obviously women were challenging it, so they had to put their foot down. And this was in the press, it was in the Independent. I'm pretty sure the Guardian had an article about it. And at the time, the education minister spoke out. But then it kind of died down because we're a relatively small community and there isn't enough awareness of what women experience within the Orthodox Jewish communities. There's a kind of generalized idea of who Jewish people are, particularly in the UK, sort of that there might be an assumption that everyone's well educated or they live in certain parts of London and that is one part of the community, but there is another part of the community where, for example, women are not allowed to drive, and it just doesn't make its way into the public consciousness of this is a really quite harsh life for a really, really gendered society where without access to contraception, women having lots and lots of children, and even just like the physical experience of that. I've written about it before, just the feeling of the shopping bags cutting into your hands as you're waiting at the bus stop and you're trying to balance things on the back of a double buggy. It's and you see other women drive past and you think, I want to do that as well. And when I have written about it in the past and spoken about it, I did it for International Women's Day a couple of years ago. Within 18 hours, there was so I wrote for the Jewish News about it. And within 18 hours, there was a response article from community leadership that said, well, our women choose not to drive. So there's a real a real desire to hold on to a very single narrative about what women's experience is like in this community. And the truth is that it's varied, right? There'll be women like me. There'll be women who want to drive, who decide not to because it's not worth it for them. And then there will be women who say, no, I want to live kind of hashtag tried wife life. And good luck to them if that's actually a choice that they're making.
Yeah.
And it is a choice. But what I'm saying is, it's very often, if you don't have another viable way to live and you don't actually have the opportunity to make other choices, then you cannot possibly make an informed choice about this one life that you're living.
No, absolutely. And as you say, it sounds as if women are pushed into a certain way of life. If they're, told they need to get married 17, 18 and have children early, the idea of 5 years, 10 years down the line wanting to drive, it will seem, just not an option for them, whether they want to or not. And that's in today's world, in today's society, seems incredibly unfair, to say the least.
Well, the things that I talk about, I talk to women campaigners, for example, from South Asian or Black communities, and they will say to me, Yehudis, the things you're arguing about now, that's the stuff we argued about in 1985. And it's 2025. And, we've been left behind. The women's movement and, the feminist movement thinks that these battles have been won.
Yeah.
And they haven't. We're living right here. We're in Hackney, Haringey, we're in Salford and Prestwich in Manchester. Very visible parts of big urban centres in the UK. And these are the conditions that we face.
Mm. Wow.
You'll be glad to know that I now do drive.
Oh, good. Lovely. That's great to know that you're driving around with your female partner and your kids. It's brilliant. Love that. Well, it's been really wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us, Yehudis Fletcher. And if people want to get a copy of your fascinating book, it's called Chutzpah, a memoir of faith, sexuality and daring to stay. And it's available on our website, TRE.radio. Yehudis, thank you so much for joining us and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.